Welcome, Spartans, to Halo TV Plus, part of Evolved, your home for Halo. I'm your host, Oran, and on Halo TV Plus, my guests and I recap Halo's original TV show, Halo the Series, and we discuss its contents and unique canon within the Silver timeline. Joining me again is Krysta Brown. Welcome back.
Hey!
As you all know, Halo TV Plus publishes a commentary episode and an analysis episode each week to accompany the Halo the Series episode of the week. This is the analysis episode where, in a moment, Krysta and I will be highlighting key scenes from Episode 3, Emergence, and discuss its effectiveness on screen while adding core canon knowledge for context. Earlier this week, we released our commentary episode for Emergence, where we discuss the whole episode while watching it. We do run into a few tangents, so enjoy those tidbits as well. If you missed it, go check it out. I recommend you listening to that before listening to our analysis, but it's ultimately up to you. Let me tidy up with some housekeeping before we dive in. If you're new to the show, welcome. Halo TV Plus is part of Evolve that hosts a variety of other Halo shows like Podcast Evolved, Mission Debrief, shout out to Krysta, Builds with Blocks, Halo Book Club, and Halo Headlines. Evolved also partners with the podcast HCS Pro Talk. Josh and Will discuss the latest information within the competitive Halo scene with an emphasis on the community every week. You can learn more about each show on our website, evolvedhalo.com. And as Halo TV Plus is a new show, I ask that you rate it and leave it a review. I greatly appreciate all the feedback and suggestions that you, the listener, have to improve the quality of this show. Krysta and I would like to take a moment to thank all of our patrons for their continued support. Your contributions allow us to continue making new content like this every single week. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you!
If you're not a subscriber, our patrons receive a variety of exclusive rewards, such as early episodes, unique swag, access to our podcast soundtrack, and more. You can head over to patreon.com/HaloEvolved to learn more. All right, Episode 3, Emergence. A quick synopsis again. John meets his new partner and discovers secrets in his own memory. Quan wants to continue her people's fight for independence, but Soren has other plans for her. And finally, McKee's plan to retrieve the magical object has deadly consequences. The director was Roll Rain. It was aired on April 7th, 2022, and its runtime is 54 minutes and 28 seconds. So, Krysta, I think we'll talk about, the big sort of moment in this episode, which is the kind of sequencing that we got of the birth of Cortana.
Oh my.
Oh my.
Oh my.
The birth of Cortana. We haven't really, we haven't seen it. We haven't read it. It's not really touched on in like it playing out right for us. We've only read about it in like Dr. Halsey's journal in terms of like how Cortana was created, how she's a smart AI versus a dumb AI, and how that's a different process with, cloning and all that. But like this is really the only time that we've got to visually see the process. And what's interesting in sort of this adaptation that you touched on a little bit in our commentary episode was how Halsey cloned her brains like 20 times, and they were all basically just like test tube brains with like not a whole lot of organic matter in terms of like a body and stuff. But like in the show, it's just like straight up a clone, and I think that sort of play was to help kind of focus in on that one character of the clone, as opposed to just like this array of test tubes that Halsey just kind of picks from of the perfect brain that she kind of breeds. But yeah, what do you think about kind of giving the clone a little bit of life in the episode, as opposed to Halsey kind of being more laboratory mad scientist with it all?
Oh, it definitely makes it more horrific. So if that's what they were going for, it was really sad. This was a person who was a clone of Halsey, so she obviously knows exactly what's about to happen to her. And she's like, well, there's nothing I can fucking do. I mean... Yeah,
she literally says that. And like, because all of Halsey's memories are implanted into this Flash clone. And she kind of basically deduces how Dr. Halsey would deduce a different type of situation or uncertainty, and says, yeah, you've cloned me because you've discovered something and you're going to harvest my brain. And how can you live with yourself? Like what, and what has changed since since you've had these thoughts years and years and years ago? And we kind of get a little bit of that humanity from the clone, because it's a clone of Halsey. So it's saying sad, that's not an emotion I initially felt, but thinking on it is very sad. Like that the one purpose of the Flash clone is just to harvest this brain, and she's alive for just a very brief moment in the episode, and she's alluded to in the previous two. And then they just liquefy her at the end of it all. They don't even harvest any other organs. They take the brain and toss her away.
It's interesting that they did decide to make a living, breathing human, because then you see Cortana as more of a sacrifice than anything else. Like, someone had to be sacrificed in order to make her. Which was, it was kind of how Cortana was made in the original series. It just wasn't a living, breathing person. It was just a brain, and it was illegal. So I think that might be one of the reasons why they did it like this, to show, like human cloning is really, really bad. And it's it's not a good thing. And then it kind of just creates a controversy around Cortana, which is, it's always kind of been there in the Halo universe, but now it's a little more spelled out for the audience.
Yeah, it's a little bit more upfront, because I think what you were saying about like sacrifice, like in core canon, the idea of a smart AI and an AI built from or taken from a brain, a human brain, that exists, but usually you have to have that individual just die, and then you take these great minds kind of immediately afterwards, and you use that as the core of these smart AIs. In the TV show, it seems that this concept is maybe like almost new, like doesn't exist. Like Cortana could be the first smart AI, since we haven't really seen any other smart AIs there. But for the point about the Flash cloning, that I think in the later episodes we'll definitely see Parangoski and Lord Hood and other leadership kind of questioning the decisions of Cortana and how she was created. But then Halsey's going to no doubt show the results of it and be like, well, yes, you're right with this, level of ethicalness and how it may be unethical. But look at the results that we're seeing. Look how Chief is, back on our side, and who knows what feats that he overcomes in the next episodes. But I can see that dynamic really playing into the continuation of the show. And that's something that we wouldn't have gotten, I feel as strongly if it was just these test tubes of partially constructed brains and things that kind of give it a little bit more, dramatic, fully formed clone. Kind of creates, I think, some better drama for it all.
And we love the drama.
Who is this? Is that TNT? We Know Drama? Or is that Showtime? Something like that. So then after Cortana's created, or put in the chip, and then inserted into Chief's brain, we get a kind of a different side of the Chief Cortana relationship. Chief's very standoffish, and I think he definitely did have his reservations in core canon, and I think one of the first things was like, what's going to happen if she gets in the way of my mission directive, and like Halsey said, like, no, she's not going to get in the way. She'll sacrifice you to complete the mission. Like, that's how she's programmed. In the show, she seems to have, more control over Chief with like putting him in stasis and stuff like that. And so it'll be interesting to see how that kind of develops. But in terms of the Chief Cortana relationship that we're used to, this is very much a different side of it. He's very like standoffish and rejects just the kind of almost free will that she has, like when she appears in front of the other members of Silver Team. He's like, like you said, Alexa off, like, go away. I didn't summon you, and I like that. I think it's good to have opposition, and definitely in TV shows you need to have conflict in order to have something to kind of root for and fight for and kind of push the show along. And so if there was, a perfect match right from the beginning, then kind of where do you go from there? You kind of have to invent another issue to then disrupt a relationship. So how do you respond to kind of the kind of initial relationship we have between Chief and Cortana in this episode?
It's definitely interesting. I don't think Chief fully understands the concept of a smart AI, that it's like another person, right? Like, Cortana is basically just another person. She has free will, she thinks, she, in some capacities, feels. I think he just sees her as a piece of equipment, and she's just like, no. Excuse you. It's also interesting, this kind of, like, spying that she's doing for Halsey, where you see her, like, talking to Chief, but also talking to Halsey at the same time, because she's an AI and she can do that. I wonder how that's going to affect the relationship down the line, because we all know that the mainline series, Cortana and Halsey, like, Cortana hated Halsey. So it'll be interesting to see if that is something that also happens in this timeline as well.
Yeah, if that's something that gets explored, kind of this triangle relationship that they have, because Chief even, Chief trusts Halsey, and that's why he kind of goes through all this. But like we saw in episodes 1 and 2, like Halsey still kind of manipulates Chief, and still wants him to kind of like repress those memories and not really think about it. But at the same time, she's very intrigued about these memories because of the artifact and how they're triggered. So there's it'll be interesting to see how this dynamic between these three characters sort of develops, because you can now that there's an odd number, you can have 2 versus 1 in some scenarios, and that can sort of incite different conflicts and motivations and stories. So see how that goes. We learned that Eridanos 2 is John's homeworld, which is accurate in core canon. It's the same thing. And he, at the end of the episode, decides to go there, and he feels and kind of, takes in, I guess I got a little ahead of myself, but he takes out the inhibitor, the pellet that's in his spine that Soren that alludes to in episode 2.
That was a great scene, by the way. Very good with character. I feel like I'm closer to the character now.
Is it because he wasn't wearing a helmet?
Yeah, I just understand him a little bit more. Yeah, I don't know, that scene made me really like him a lot more.
I'm glad. I am pro Pablo, and so if you're pro Pablo, I'm glad, and I'm glad this is the scene that swung you in that direction. It swooned you, if you will. But yeah, so he removes the inhibitor pellet, and we get this great sequence, like I talked about in the commentary episode, that I just really enjoyed the sound design and him experiencing all these different kind of like minor emotions and minor responses through the senses that kind of, humans experience every single day. And like Soren says, like it's like opening your eyes for the first time since you've been in the dark. And yeah, I thought that it was beautiful. It was great to kind of have that moment, and then it eventually culminated to him urging and wanting to find out what is up with his memories, and he rushes back and touches the artifact, and that's when we learn that he needs to go back to Eridanos 2, because he buried a Forerunner artifact, which, like, I'm a little iffy on, because like the relic is like a pretty good size relic. It's like the size of like a small lamp, or like a decent like potted plant. And if it fits inside of something else, then that something else must be like the size, I don't know, of like a 4-foot log from what we kind of saw. So it'll be interesting to kind of see where like that kind of goes, and like did John just stumble upon this as a kid and like lugged it back? It must be like the size of a kid, if not taller.
Well, his dad wasn't very impressed, and he said, "No more Forerunner artifacts for you," and his way of doing that was to just bury it in the back of the yard. Ugh, no more video games for you, John.
Yeah, could you imagine he just buries his Xbox back there? Parenting 101.
It's interesting how John is introduced to Forerunner artifacts so early. Because there's this whole theme going on in this series where not all humans can use Forerunner artifacts. It's only some, the like quote-unquote chosen one. So obviously McKay is one of those people, and now John is one of those people. It's not like in the mainline series where, you know, if you're a human, you can fucking do it whenever, you know, you just touch a Forerunner artifact. It's like, hey, what's up? So they're a little more picky in this series. So it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out since John has been in contact with Forerunner artifacts since he was a kid.
Do you think that in the future we're going to start getting some like Forerunner lore and explanations in terms of like geishas and that sort of angle on like imprints from the Forerunners down to humanity? Because that's basically what these blessed ones are, right? Like in core canon, every human has the ability to interact with Forerunner objects because humanity itself is the race that is destined to assume the mantle, and they are reclaimers. But in the show, it's basically only John and McKee, at least for now. And in core canon, the idea of geishas, or geishas, where a ancient individual kind of imprints themselves onto a human, that is something that isn't common. That's also very unique, and only select individuals have imprint. And John is, of course, one of them since he's our hero. And so do you see that sort of angle being developed into the story and then maybe tweaked to fit the TV show?
I feel like if it is, it's going to be a little farther out. Right now, obviously, the Forerunner stuff is just a convenient way to move the story along. They're not really delving too deep in what the Forerunners are. So I feel like that's going to be a little farther on into the series. Because it's a big topic, right? So dealing with the Forerunners in any capacity is like this huge topic because it's like super, super high fantasy sci-fi. So that's something that I think just the general audience would have to be kind of eased into anyway. I see them going into it because obviously they have to explain this stuff eventually. But I think just like in the mainline Halo games, it's not going to happen until a little later, until more stuff is kind of more solidified in the universe.
Yeah, maybe after we learn a little bit more of, you know, what a Halo is and like why it was built and what purpose does it serve. Much like in the games, we kind of learn about that, and then we learn more and more about the Forerunners. I mean, we had the benefit of reading the Forerunner trilogy to kind of learn about the Forerunners, but like you can't just have someone read the book and the show and like, you know everything. So there definitely needs to be a more organic way for them to learn that information, which, yeah, I feel like would make sense if it happens, later on. But I guess, maybe this new artifact that they find in Chief's backyard, in John's backyard, is, maybe that vision tells them or something. I wonder if we're going to get the librarian, now that I think about it.
That would be great. I'd be very happy. I mean, they kind of have to do library and didact, right? I mean,
I don't know if you need the didact. Definitely not this early, but like I feel like I think it'd be interesting if they tease a little bit of that and we get like a Halo 4 librarian astral sort of like a moment. But we'll see. It gets me excited to just kind of thinking about the possibilities there. Anything else you want to talk about, John, or shall we kind of move over to McKee and kind of her story and where she's going?
I think we're good on John. I'm good on John.
You're good on John, especially after that scene.
Yeah, I'm very good, definitely.
So McKee, I think like next to John, I feel like she's up there in kind of the more character progression than some of the other characters, I think. And I feel like that was kind of needed early on because of how unique of a character she is. And like we've said numerous times on this show, and other people have said on the internet, her character just doesn't exist in the core canon in terms of like a Covenant sympathizer and human that aids them on the extinction of humanity. I mean, there are instances where humans kind of partner up with Covenant, or at least the aliens within the Covenant for different like rebellious means, but kind of what Makee represents is not really explored outside of the fact that she's just like a reclaimer or a blessed one. This episode, I feel like it really gives the viewer, and personally for me, I think a good solidified direction of her alliance. We get her backstory in the beginning of the episode that kind of shows this garbage world that she's living on, literally, and she, might have been abandoned by her parents or otherwise orphaned, and her best friend gets murdered in front of her, and she's saved by these elites, and this luminary led them to her. And I don't know, I really like that scene, and I think that gives us the motivation to accept her role among the Covenant and the Sang-Shayun, and kind of just I kind of just assume that during the 10 plus years that they're together, that she's kind of fed these pleasantries about how she's gifted, and these audacious sort of lies on how terrible the humans are, and how she's the blessed, the pure one that justifies why she was saved, and while the rest shouldn't be. And she also feels powerful herself because she's the one that can activate this object, so like she feels some self-worth that motivates her.
I like the relationship between her and Mercy, where it's almost a mentor or fatherly like relationship between them. It's really interesting because obviously we don't see a softer side of the Sang-Shayun very often, especially the prophets. So it's interesting to see that play out and just see a different side of the prophets, because the prophets are almost just a secondary thought to Makee herself. Like, she's the most important person in the room, right? It's not the prophets anymore. So it's interesting to see how that dynamic has changed. Also, Truth isn't the guy here, it's Mercy, which is great as well, because Mercy got the short end of the stick in the other series, so...
we haven't even gotten, I think, Truth and Regret like named. I think like they're there obviously, but I don't know which one's which, like of those two anyway.
I'm guessing Truth is the one in red, but
I don't know. So later on, she boards the UNSC ship. What Gladys, I think. I forget. It's not on my notes. And we get kind of the moment that I feel like I needed. For me, I don't know if other viewers needed, but like I needed a moment to be reassured that Makee is a quote unquote bad guy, and that she is with the Covenant. She may have like very small doubts, just kind of like how Master Chief has doubts about his being a Spartan, but that doesn't deter him from being a Spartan. He just questions a little bit of like his upbringing, and so Makee kind of echoes that in terms of her upbringing and her fondness of the book and the memory of her childhood friend. But at her core, she is manipulating this entire ship and kills them all with the assistance of the Lekolo, and there's like no remorse, like not even like she barely hesitates for any of that. And I thought it was just great. It really, I think, shows her dominance, shows what she's capable of, and how much of a force she is that we'll hopefully see down the line. And maybe she encounters Chief. We kind of talk a little bit on the other episode that since she's going to magical and Soren and Quan are going to magical, maybe they meet and there's some tension there. And I think it sets it up nicely to where now we can see more of her as this force of opposition, as opposed to just being kind of a puppet.
Yeah, she's definitely an interesting character. I'm really excited to see where they go with her. She's probably the most interesting addition to the Halo series that they've done in this TV series. So I like her a lot. I'm interested to see where her story goes, because it's like, is she gonna eventually betray the Covenant? Are the Covenant gonna betray her? I mean, Obviously, right now, she's 100% confident in maybe not 100%, but she's very confident in the Covenant right now, so it'll be interesting to see. I feel like there's going to be some kind of character turn, but I don't know.
I that's my one kind of worry with her is that, I mean, it all depends on how they do it. I mean, it could be very impactful, but I do think that it's a slippery slope where the entire season she's been, this antagonistic character, to then have a turn and a change of heart. To me, I don't know. I almost feel like it may be forced, or I worry that it could come off as forced. So I'm hesitant if that were to be the case. But if we see more of her like we did in this episode, I'm fully on board, and I fully root for her. I want her to find the object. I want her to find Chief, because then we get to play with the possibilities of these two very different characters interacting with each other, and to kind of see how that unfolds on screen. But if she just goes and gets rescued and undoctrinated, well, then now where does the story go? I think you kind of have a little bit of a harder time engaging the conflict. But I'm not a writer, so who knows what they might come up with. But that's sort of my initial kind of thoughts with it, is that I want to see more of what we saw in episode 3, because I think that's, to me, that's what McKee is, and I hope she kind of stays down that path.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential for this character, so it's in every time she's on screen, I pay a little bit more attention.
That's great. That's exactly what we need. The only other call out I think I'll make, well, actually, first I wanted to say that on each episode, I kind of have a character or actor like highlight. Episode 1, it was Parangoski, or it was kind of shared between Parangoski and Kwan, because I feel like both actresses, Shabana and Urin, just did a phenomenal job on that first episode. And then I really liked Bokeem Woodbine on episode 2 for Soren. And then I think for episode 3, I think it really goes to McKee and Charlie Murphy, and kind of what she did in this episode. I felt that it was really great. I don't know if you have the same opinion or if you lean towards someone else, Krysta, but...
Oh no, she's very impressive. Just the alien language is really impressive.
Yeah, she spoke English this episode. Like, it took her 3 episodes.
She knows that language. Wow. Yeah, I like her. I think the actress does a very good job portraying her. I don't know. It's just very well done. She does a very good job. I also like Halsey. I think Halsey is a definitely great actress. And of course, we got Jennifer Taylor. We got Jen Taylor, finally. So it's great to have that familiarity with the character. I mean, of course, the first thing Cortana says is, at the end of the game, the king and the pawn go in the same box, which is exactly what she says in the original series, so that was a cool callback as well, but I am so happy she was able to get into this series and do a little bit of voice acting.
And I bet you she did the mocap as well. I bet you it was really Jen Taylor walking around, just like she does for the games. The only other thing I'll say about this episode, I think, and then we can kind of get your final thoughts, Krysta, before we wrap out, is there was a moment in the episode where Miranda first sees the Forerunner object as a hologram, and Parangoski comes in and says that I want to build a second team that works in parallel with Halsey on what this artifact is. And she mentions that it's 100,000 years old, which of course is the time of the Forerunners. But there's another note in there, another line that that Parangoski says about Halsey to Miranda, by saying, I want to some degree, I don't have it exactly, but she says, I would like to become less reliable on Dr. Halsey in the future, which Miranda very much wants to hear as well, because she has some hatred of Halsey and doesn't like being overshadowed by her. And I feel like this is the beginning of a relationship between Parangoski and Miranda that I see being very interesting going forward, and just kind of not necessarily like sabotaging Halsey, but like, Parangoski is very calculated, and she doesn't want She wants to be in control of all the little things that are going on, and Halsey is very much a wild card. And I feel like having Miranda in her court can alleviate some of the tension that Halsey brings to Parangoski. So it was a very small scene. It was only about a minute in the episode. We didn't really see too much more of Halsey or of Parangoski, but that scene in particular I felt was a great sort of like turning point that we get to see more hopefully in the next episode. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that. Is there anything you want to touch on before we kind of wrap up, Krysta?
This episode makes me extremely excited for where this series is going. I think it's setting up a lot of interesting threads to follow in these next couple episodes. So it's just very exciting. I'm very excited.
Yeah, and I think the way you put it on the commentary episode was that all the players are here and are now in the game, and now we get to see where they go. And I would very much agree with that. So yeah, I agree. Let's see where this show takes us. All right. Well, thank you, Krysta, for joining me. And thank you to the listeners for joining us for another week of Halo TV Plus. If you're interested, Alex Wakeford releases his Silver Debriefing blogs on Halo Waypoint every Monday. This blog is a source to recap the story of each episode in detail and serves as a hub for additional show-related content and provides some more detailed insight into certain things. So if you want to read the latest episode or the latest blog of the Silver Debrief for Emergence, you could head over to Halo Waypoint now and give that a read. It recaps the episode, and like I just said, it gives some other detailed information, which is great nuggets to kind of digest, if you will. Halo the series premieres exclusively on Paramount Plus every Thursday morning at midnight Pacific time. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, you can find every episode to all of Evolved's shows on evolvedhalo.com. It also features links to our Discord server, Patreon page, Xbox Live Club, and other contact resources. Again, another special shout out to our patrons for their support for Evolved and making all of our shows possible. You can head over to patreon.com/HaloEvolved to learn more. And finally, if you want to leave us an email or a voicemail for this week's Halo the Series episode, you can email us at podcastevolved@gmail.com. You can give us a call at 205-386-5833. And with that, everybody, I've been your host, and until next time, Evolved!
Evolved!